Hello, this is Chris, HA5XA, and this is the Anico Hamshop vlog, where we would like to show you some interesting products that you can also order from our web store. In this episode, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite lines of transceivers, the SunSDR2 line of radios. There are two models in this series, the SunSDR2 Pro, which is the 20-watt version. This is what I personally bought actually before I joined Anico, so I've been using it for about 2 years. This is what I'm going to use for demonstration purposes in this video, but also there is the SunSDR2dx version, which has 100-watt finals and has some features that might also be interesting to you. So you have to decide whether you would like to have the 20-watt version or the 100-watt version SunSDR2dx. In this video, I'm not going to talk too much about the technical specifications of these radios. You can find all the details on our website on anico-hamshop.eu and also on the manufacturer's website eextdr.com. I particularly recommend checking out the website of Expert Electronics, the manufacturer, because not only can you find the specifications there, but also all the software that you need to download. The radio looks to be very simple. It's just a small metal box which has a couple of connectors here on the front panel, one on-off button also on the front, and it has quite a number of connectors on the rear and a big heatsink on top of the radio, which is about the same size as the transceiver itself. On the SunSDR2dx model, you also get a fan which is built in. On the SunSDR2 Pro, you have to add a fan yourself because the radio can get very hot, so it's always a good idea to cool it. There is no control panel. This radio cannot be used as a standalone radio. You will always need a computer to run the SDR software. Currently, there is the ExpertSDR2 software, which is available from the manufacturer's website. The newer version, the ExpertSDR3, is coming out. Already, there is some preview version of that software that is in an alpha stage. A lot of features are not working fully, but you can get an idea of where the project is going. So the transceiver can be manipulated from your computer using your mouse or your keyboard. However, there is also an optionally available accessory, the eCoder panel. There are several versions of the eCoder available. The standard version I have has a large VFO knob. It has a number of configurable buttons which can do various things in the software. 3 knobs which can be programmed to do various things like changing the volume or setting the clarifier or changing filter width. And these can also be used as buttons because you can press them in. There also is another version of the eCoder which has a higher resolution encoder in it, so probably tuning the VFO knob is a little bit finer. There also is a version for people who like DIYing their own controller. Expert Electronics already announced a new version of the eCoder, the eCoder 2, which will, among other things, feature an inbuilt sound card, so it's going to be a very interesting product. However, it is not yet available. Once it is, I'm going to show you how that works. So once you have unboxed the radio, you will have to decide where you are going to place it and how you are going to wire it up. The first thing that you will need to run the SunSDR2 radios is a good computer. The minimum specifications of the computer can be found on the Expert Electronics website. For the best experience, I suggest that you use some relatively recent i5 or i7 computers with enough GPU power as well, so probably a good video card will help. I've heard problems from people who say that the software is not fully compatible with AMD, so I do recommend using Intel chipsets. When I started out, I had my DA30 dual-core laptop, a very old one, which was like 15 years old. It did work, but it was not perfect. Today, I use an HP laptop, which is i7, has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it seems to work all right. The radio and the computer communicate using LAN, so you will need an Ethernet cable that you have to plug into your transceiver on the one side and into your computer on the other. It is also possible to connect the radio to your existing home network. The radio comes with its own IP address set in that you have to change if you would like to use it on your local area network. However, the first time you want to do that, you have to connect it to your computer direct. After having spoken about the computer, now let's talk about what else we can connect to this transceiver. There is a 6.3mm jack socket for your headphones. If the transceiver is close to you and you can connect your headphones direct into this port, or if you want to connect your audio coming out from the radio to some other device, I suggest using this connector as it offers low latency. So if you want to do keying with your Morse pedal, for example, then you will not feel that there is any delay, any serious delay. So it's probably most convenient to listen to this audio port rather than the audio coming out from your computer. But it really depends on your setup and how you would like to use it. There are two microphone ports on the front. Microphone 1 is a 6.3mm type jack connector. The other one is an RJ45 type connector. This is the same type of connector that you can find on some Yaesu radios like the FT818, 817, 891, 857, 991A and some others. So the MH31B handheld microphone is a perfect fit for this radio. So if you want to use the radio in your close proximity, then I recommend using this microphone port rather than these microphone ports rather than the microphone on your computer. Now the rear side of the radio differs between the two models. This is the SunSDR2 Pro, the 20-watt radio that I have in my hand. This has a port for connecting the DC power. Now it's important to mention that it requires 15 volts. If you have a 12 volt or 13.8 volt station power supply, that will work with the radio. The problem is that the power will not be full. So you will not enjoy like 20 watts or 18 watts, but you will get somewhat less. So if it's a concern to you, I suggest that you use a 15 volt power supply. I, for example, bought one which was meant for laptops. I think Toshiba laptops use 15 volts. So I took a Toshiba laptop power supply. There also is the Ethernet connector. There's a 6.3mm jack socket for the Morse key or Morse pedal. There is another 6.3mm jack socket here. This is for PTT. So if you would like to use a separate PTT, let's say a foot switch or something like that, you can plug it here and put the radio in to transmit. There is an external control interface. This is used to control different accessories. I use this control socket to control a computer fan that I normally place on top of the grill, on top of the heatsink, because the radio can get very hot otherwise. There are a number of other connectors here, which I'm going to talk about very shortly. However, the three most important connectors here are the antenna connectors. A1 is for VHF, that is 2 meters, whereas A2 and A3 can be used on HF and 6 meters. All three connectors are Mini UHF. Now the choice of using Mini UHF connectors rather than standard SO239s on the back of the radio is criticized by many. However, I also understand why Expert Electronics decided to use Mini UHF, and that is because they wanted to have all these number of connectors on the backside of this tiny transceiver. So they wanted to fit 3 antenna connectors here, and for this reason they used Mini UHF, which is definitely smaller than standard UHF. So if you would like to use your existing antenna cables with a UHF connector already fitted, then the first idea you might have is to use an adapter plug. It has a Mini UHF male plug on one side and an SO239, that's the female UHF connector on the other. And then you can screw it into the back of the radio. Now this solution definitely works to some extent. I was using my radio like this for quite a long time. However, I wasn't very happy with this. As you can see, these adapters are very close to each other. So if you want to plug in your regular PL259s, they will be just too close to one another. They touch upon themselves. You can't really rotate them without scratching the connectors, so it's not very healthy. Another problem I found with these small adapter plugs is that when you use them in the back of the radio, they protrude quite a lot into the back. And if your coaxial cable is not flexible enough, for example, if you use H500 or RG213, then they will just pull the connector sideways, either this direction or this direction. I had a lot of these connection issues. Sometimes I felt that the antenna was not properly connected and I had to just pull the radio a little bit forward or back, or move the connector at the back. So it was not perfect and I felt it was very, very dangerous. The radio does come with one pigtail cable that has a mini UHF plug on one side and the standard UHF connector on the other. However, if you want to use more than one antenna, then you will definitely need more such cables, or you will have to create your own cable. There are several further connectors on the backside of the radio. For example, there is an ALC control if you want to use your radio with a linear amplifier. Also, there are 4 SMA connectors for different purposes. You can use external filters if you want, and you can put them in the reception circuit. You can also use this DAC output to use this transceiver as a signal generator, and you can also connect an external GPS or an external reference clock to have the frequency stability of your transceiver. You can place this radio wherever in your shack. If you have room for this radio on an open shelf, I suggest that you put it there so that it can get good heat dissipation. Also that you can easily reach these connectors. However, once the radio is wired up properly, you don't really have to touch it anymore. In my case, because my shack is very small, I keep the radio under my desk. So once you have wired everything up, you will have to go to the ExpertSDR website and find and download the software that you need. The way the Expert Electronics website is constructed is that you have to go to the products page and find your radio. Currently we use the SunSDR2 Pro. If you go here, you will see all the information about the transceiver. You can see the description, the specifications, the video, some videos, photos, documentation, and most importantly, the software. So you can download the Windows version because that's what I use here, the 64-bit version of the ExpertSDR2 software. The software is going to change very shortly once the ExpertSDR 3 version comes out. Currently it is available only in a beta version or alpha version, so it's more like a preview rather than a production version. So I suggest that you use the official latest release. I've already downloaded this piece of software and it's running on my computer. Once you have installed it, go to the options page and set the IP address of your transceiver. If you have connected the transceiver direct to the radio, then you will find the transceiver on a certain IP address. But here you can press discover and then it will show you what radios are available on which IP address, and then you click use. Actually, you can have multiple radios on your network. You can set from the software which radio you would like to connect to. Currently, I have set it on to work on my existing LAN, so all my computers on the network use this IP range. However, the first time you connect, the radio will be on this IP address. If you would like to put it on your network, first you have to connect directly to the radio using the software and set the new IP address to match an IP of your existing network. But make sure that that IP address is not used by any other computer on your network and that your router is not giving that IP address to any other computer on the network by DHCP. Once you have selected a desired IP address on your LAN, then rewire the radio, connect it not to your laptop, not to your computer, but connect it to a switch or your router. Now, once you have set the IP address properly, then you can connect to the transceiver by pressing this on-off button here. Once the connection is established, you can see the Bandscope showing signals, and also you can see something happening down here in the waterfall region of the screen. You can select signals by just clicking on the screen using your left mouse key, or you can at any time use your eCoder and turn the VFO knob as if it was any traditional transceiver. Now the screen, I think, is quite easy to understand. Let's see from the bottom. You can see the resolution of the screen. You can see how much CPU power is used up. Currently it's about 6 or 7%. You can see the status of your microphone and headphones, and you can also see that the radio is quite hot. It's already 41.5 Celsius. You can, as I told you, go to the options panel, go to external control, and here you can set the thermostat. So I've set it in a way that after 35 centigrade, the fan is going to spin up to cool the radio. Down at the bottom right, you can see the time and the date. Up here, you can find various buttons, for example, the RX2 button. Now, a specialty of the SunSDR2 transceiver is that you can have two almost independent radios. If you click RX2, you can see that a second radio is opened up. So you can see altogether 4 different frequencies here, and actually you can monitor and listen to all these 4 frequencies because there are 2 receivers with dual VFO on both radios. You can always turn sub RX on and sub RX on here as well, so you can hear both your transmit frequency and your receive frequency. What your transmit frequency is on a particular radio is set by clicking this TX button. So which is red, which is set to red, is your transmit frequency. So if you would like to work a DX, so use this split, this is the way you can operate. You can turn on or turn off the sub receiver on each band. Let's go back to the single radio mode. Next to it, you can see the preamplification level possibilities. Bandscope, if you turn this on, you can have an overview of all the bands, not just the band you are operating on, but you can see a lot of bands. With the right mouse key, holding the right mouse key, you can zoom in or out, so you can see a lot of bands at the same time. Amateur radio bands and the CW 11 meter CB band are highlighted, so you can see what is actually happening on the different frequencies. So I think it's a very easy way to check the propagation on bands other than your operating band. You have the antenna switch. You can select which antenna you would like to use for different bands. You can save the antennas per bands. You can set which antenna you would like to use for transmit and which antenna you would like to use for receive. Here you can turn on or off your receive antenna, which you can specify. You have the power amplifier control here. Here you can turn on the headphones on your sound card in your computer, which is different from the sound card or the audio out on your radio, on the physical radio. This is the memory panel. Here you can set memory channels. I don't really use memory channels on an HF radio, but some people do. Here you can set the volume of your speakers, of your sound card, and you can also monitor your own signal and set the level of your monitor signal. Here you have a MOX, which is like a PTT button, a tune button. You can set the power level of your tuning. So if you move this to, let's say, 40%, then it will transmit at only 40% of the transmit power. Sometimes your antenna tuner will require you to use a lower power than what your radio would transmit. Let's set the tuning level at 50%, and let's press the tune button. You can see that I'm transmitting with little more than the 10 watts, but unfortunately SWR is around 4, which is really horrible, so I'm not going to transmit anymore today. We have the VAC control. This is for a virtual audio cable. If you are sending the signal out to a different piece of software running on your computer, you can set a squelch, you can mute things. You have Vox control, the break-in control, which also sets your CW speed, which you can actually also set over here with this slider. So if you use the inbuilt CW keyer, that is where you set its speed. The processor button, the inbuilt processor, is used for setting your outgoing audio. Here you can start out sending the signal out to a sound card, specified sound card. And you can also set where you are going to record. The radio has two VFOs, VFO A, VFO B. You can change the frequency by moving the cursor over the digit, and then use the mouse wheel to go up or down, or you can also click here and go up or down at this specific digit. Here in this window, you can see the Bandscope. You can see how strong the various signals on the band are. If you click into the field, you can set your VFO to that frequency. With this slider here, you can select how the signals are visualized, how strong the signals appear. If it is a very noisy band, then I suggest that you turn this down a little bit so that the waterfall is dark blue. But if it is a band on which the signals are weak, but there is not too much noise, then you can move it up a little bit to find signals more easily. Here you can see a zoom position triangle. This triangle can be moved to any frequency. Let's move it here. And what it does is it sets the center for your zoom. So if you move the cursor to this bar, right click it and move it out or move it in, then you can zoom in or zoom out. And you can see the signal more clearly. You can navigate very easily, or you can select the middle or the center of that given signal. Here you have the S meter, which shows you the signal in S units or dBm. And when you transmit, it will show you the SWR and the power output. You can record voice, or you can record the IQ, the digital signals out, and you can then play with the digital signals later on. Here you have a mixer, which helps you set what signals, which VFO you would like to hear on which side of your headphones. And you also have an EQ, where you can set equalization to the audio signal. Here on this right hand side of the screen, you can select from various preset filter bandwidth. So for example, you can go down to 50 Hertz or 100 Hertz or even 1 kilohertz. You can also drag the width of the band pass. And now let's have a quick look at the options menu. I've already shown you a couple of things from here, but I would like to give you a quick overview of what sort of different things you can set here. There are tons of things that you can set. Probably it's a little bit daunting and overwhelming at the beginning, but once you get used to it and once you get the hang of it, and then you will understand that it's very, very versatile, and it gives you a lot of fun, a lot of features, a lot of possibilities to set things. You can see that there are different tabs up here. The first menu, and probably one of the most important ones, is the device menu. I've already shown you how to use and how to set the IP address. But here you can set a lot of things like your Vox, your DSP features, your transmit features, how the radio is transmitting, how the filters are set. You can also set up CW keying if you would like to use additional keys, or use the serial port for controlling your CW transmission. Here you have the external control, which I've also shown you. This is where you can set various external devices and control them automatically. If you go to the expert page, here you can set different power levels for different bands if you wish to, or you can update the firmware from here, which you will sometimes have to do. Now let's go to the next tab, which is for sound card settings. Here you can set where the radio is sending the line out signal, where it is recording the wave file when you are recording. You can set your microphone and your speakers or your headphones. Here is the VAC control if you use a virtual audio cable. If you would like to connect the SDR software to some other software for FT8 or RTTY or something, this is where you can connect it up to a different piece of software. Display, here you can set how the spectrum looks like, how the waterfall looks like, how the filters look like. So basically what the computer screen should look like. This is the CAT control. Now what is very important here is that this radio or this software can actually act as two separate radios. So you can have an RX1 and an RX2 as I showed you earlier. So you can set different COM port for one radio and a different COM port for the other radio. This is very useful if you use both virtual transceivers simultaneously. For example, if you're a contester and you would like to use two bands at the same time, like SO2V or SO2R, then you have two different controls. Your logging software will see the two radios separately. This is the control panel tab. Here you can set what your controller, what your eCoder should do. You can define what the different buttons or what the different knobs here do. So for example, my upper left knob here is the volume button. You can see the volume going up and down. The middle button is used for it, so it will change the clarifier. I set the lower left button to be the MOX, so this acts like a PTT button. If you press any of these triangles here at the bottom right, then you can change what the particular button or knob should do. It's very easy to redefine the function of the given button. So on the eCoder panel, you can always take the hood, the cover of the buttons up, and then you can replace the label inside, so you will always know what that particular button does, even if you redefine the key. Here on the features panel, you can set which software you would like to launch together with ExpertSDR2. I launched two pieces of software together with ExpertSDR2. One is SDC, which is software-defined connectors by UT4LW. I'm going to talk about that software in a different video because it is key to the SunSDR experience. ExpertSync allows us to synchronize the radio with another radio. CW Skimmer is used to send the RX IQ output to the CW Skimmer software, which is very popular. However, with SunSDR, I don't really use CW Skimmer, the original CW Skimmer, because SDC has its own skimmer and SDC does it much better. The shortcuts tab allows you to create keyboard shortcuts. So if you would like to operate the radio very easily, then you can create different keyboard shortcuts, and you only have to press a key on the keyboard to control that thing on the radio. IQ recorder, you can set where the unprocessed digital signals are stored if you want to keep them. TCI, which stands for Transceiver Control Interface, is probably the best innovation of the SunSDR ecosystem. This allows you to connect anything to anything. You can connect two different pieces of software using TCI very easily. You don't have to do too much magic to make a connection between two different pieces of software. And TCI is not limited to software running on the same computer. You can always use it on your local area network as well. So you can send information and data, audio, any sort of information between two different computers on your network. The last page here is the spot settings page. Here you can set a DX cluster server. I set dx.hu 9000, which is a Hungarian cluster server. If I enable it and click OK, then I can see the spots from the given server overlaid on my screen. So I can see 4J88ON, LA6UIA, and 7P8RU. And if I would like to jump to that frequency, I simply just move the cursor over that spot and left click it, and my VFO jumps there. Unfortunately, I can't hear that station. However, I can see that there are lots of stations calling him. So probably he is there, and these are the stations calling him. Let's move to that zoom position and zoom in. And I can see that there are lots of stations trying to call a 7P8RU in Lesotho. I hope you've liked this video and found it somewhat useful. If you have further questions before purchase, please send us an email or leave a comment here below, and we will be happy to answer if we can. Anico Hamshop is operated in the European Union. We have offices in Hungary, Romania and Slovakia. However, we deliver to all the countries of the European Union as well as worldwide. If you'd like to place an order, please visit our web store at anico-hamshop.eu. Thanks for watching.